So, yesterday I went with my mother to an event, a March of Life. The March of Life, which was supposed to commemorate the event, or rather the opposition of the Warsaw Jewish ghetto against the Nazi occupier, against death, against the committed murder, against Jewish people being taken by train into the camps. And it spoke of trains being derailed, which saved people, of certain uprisings which happened in the camps. And it spoke of a community that has been murdered. And so we took a walk of life, because of all the death we must never forget about the march of the living, who must remember and never let things like that happen again. All of the people who took part in it were given a bag that looks like this. This is the bag. And each and every bag included a small booklet like this, which explains the event. It is organized by the Jewish Historical Institute. This, the March of Memory, a photography, the roots of the uprising, and these are the photos, the digging of the potatoes near the Jewish cemetery. Mothers leading their children for a walk, in brackets. We learn about the deficit of nature, which I've talked about on a past stream. A deficit of nature leads to a disruption of emotional development, physical development, and social development, because a person is divorced from their natural environment. The effect of that deprivation was most observed among the youngest, because the ghetto was isolated. Children did not know what nature was. They did not know what a lake was. They could not know. There were no concept of what these things were. There's a whole booklet describing these things, explaining these things. The view of the burning ghetto. The view of the burning ghetto. This is the view of the burning ghetto. will show you a few more photos. The ghetto wall. Next, we have oh, I think that's all I have to show you. Huh. Interesting. So this also, my mom's friends' daughters were also the organizers of the event, have added a new thing to the march, a thing that was not done before, because many people died in the ghetto and during the Holocaust, and nobody knows their names. Nobody will ever know their names. They died nameless. Many people died nameless, and nobody knows who they were. And so the daughters of my mom's friend have decided, have proposed that we take ribbons with many different hypothetical names, ribbons of many different colors. Unfortunately, I do not have the ribbons with me right now. And we would give the ribbons to people. Each would have a name on it, and we would tie them, the ribbons, in order to bring the people that were nameless back into memory, to give them a name to all those nameless people that have died. And that was part of the march. That was part of the memory of what happened. So first, let us, if the page will allow us, if you will allow me to invite all of you to let me turn this on. If this link will work. If you will allow me to take this march again with all of you. I've been on the official march yesterday, and now we can symbolically take part in the March of the Living again. Yesterday's march started here. This is the Umschlagplatz. This is the Platz from which Jewish people were taken to the trains and driven into the death camps. This place was filled with people yesterday. We sat here. My mom sat over there, and she sat over here as well. This here was a whole stock of bags, of these bags, and everybody could take one. Apologies. Over here, oh, it's so nice that you can get here. Over there, there were more bags prepared for people. If we can get into the, if we could get into the, if we could see the inside of the, yes, I hope we can see the inside of the Platz. No, unfortunately, we can see it only from here. This is the inside of the, and it's filled with writing in Polish and Hebrew, oh, and English. The path of suffering and death of over 300,000 Jews were driven in 1942, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto, to the gas chambers of the Nazi extermination camps. So our march begins here from the Umschlagplatz, which, as I've said, served as the place from which people were taken to the camps. During the march, the streets were emptied, so it was safe for all of us to march in the middle of the street. So we marched through this street. And there's a really important thing that I will want to touch upon later. I was full of many emotions as I walked the street. And along the way, there are monuments, and I hope we will be able to see the monuments. I will show you the monuments. There it is. This is also a monument of the ghetto. This is also a stone that commemorates people that have died inside of the ghetto. Let's continue. We entered this street, I'm pretty sure. I hope I'm remembering the march correctly, because it's all a bit of a haze, so to speak. We continued this way, and we are actually more monuments. 1940, 1943 monuments which are, you could say that they are the monuments of the ghetto. There are a few more. There are actually many such places along this street. There's one more here, 1940, 1943. We still continue along the march. There's a monument over here. I think we've actually missed an important monument as well. No, we have not missed it. We passed the street. You're also sort of learning the... this is the Pauline Museum. And this is a big monument of the fighters of the ghetto. I will make my feelings clear once we finish our March of the Living, and then we will do, of course, Warsaw was definitely different when the ghetto existed. We arrive at the park. And then we go further and further until we arrive at our destination. Our destination is here. Kino Muranów, the Muranów Cinema. This was the final stop of our March of the Living. And over here, a Yiddish concert was played. I'm not gonna show the Yiddish songs right now. We're going to include them in the video that we will upload up about this whole event. And these songs were created before the war. They were songs about things like fight against prejudice, fight against bigotry, and a song of people dreaming about a new, more beautiful world. The Yiddish song of dreamers that envisioned a new, more beautiful world. Unfortunately, what came next was the Holocaust and the death of over 3 million people living in Poland. Let us now go back in time. Go back in time to before the war, when the Jewish community was still present, when it still functioned, when still 3.5 million Jewish people were alive in Poland. Unfortunately, it is impossible to go physically to a Jewish quarter of the time because Warsaw has been destroyed during the war. About 80% of the whole city was razed to the ground during World War II. So the Warsaw we see today, the one that I'm showing you now, is a totally different place from what used to exist before 1939. For example, take this big building. This building, instead of this building, there used to be a big synagogue here. There used to be a big synagogue here, but it has been destroyed. And in its place, this building was built. But what we can do is that we can visit the Pauline Museum, and part of the permanent exhibition which recreates a Jewish street as it was before the war. I've been to this exhibit and I have to tell you that it really is great. It really is incredible when you go there in person. It's actually pretty big. The recreation is actually pretty big and it's pretty impressive. So this is how a typical Jewish street look like before the war. We can inhabit it, we can go inside. This is a typical grocery store. This is this says a new daily, I'm guessing a newspaper. Library, cinema, hats. And we can enter and see how a coffee shop looked like. And we can read the signs on the walls. I, on the other hand, I am a Jew, a Polish Jew. And I don't care what any side will say, I have been raised in Polish culture. I am tied to Polishness. I am a Polonized Jew, a Jew Pole. I don't care about either side thinks about it. Raised in Polish culture, I have become attached to Polishness with the whole of my soul. From an interview with Julian Tubing, Nasz Przegląd. For anti-Semites, I am a Jew, and my poetry is Jewish. For Jewish nationalists, I am a traitor and renegade. Tough luck, says Julian Tubing, 1922. You have a collection of the press. We continue our blast into the past. A small recreation of the cinema, the Jewish cinema. I went to Karova Street to see the Jewish theater. I spent an interesting evening and learned a lot of things. The actors performed with such expression that one hardly needed a translator. We continue to the dance floor, which I actually tried to do the dancing. Each of us, every self-aware Yiddishist, derives spiritual nourishment from this Yiddish language charmer. More press. A heritage of a community that is now gone. A heritage of a community that is now gone. We continue. War. In Poland, it was sunny, fresh, azure blue. I was shaving and suddenly the earth begins to rumble and the sky to crackle. The President of the Republic orders universal mobilization. And so it's war. As of today, we put everything on hold. Our public and private lives become secondary. We have entered a time of war. All the nation's efforts must be directed to a single end. We are all now soldiers. Citizens, Jews. In this unified effort, no one can be missing. In other words, we are all in this together. And so it began, the destruction and the death. We will watch a bit of the death part of the exhibition. Although initially most Jews preferred Soviet to German occupation, it was not long before the Soviets' heavy hand ground them down. Noted Dr. Baruch Milch in his diary from February 1940 until June 1941. The Soviets carried out 4 deportation actions and resettled some 320,000 Poles, including 800 Jews, to the east, mainly to Kazakhstan and Siberia. Most of them died of hunger and from the harsh conditions of forced labor. The Polish intelligentsia must not play the leader's role. We want only their labor force. Adolf Hitler at meeting at 17th October 1939. Humiliation. Three officers stopped an elderly Jew passing by, and one of them took a pair of scissors out of his pocket. He cut off half the Jew's gray beard. A fourth officer took the photograph, noted um, Apollinaire Harglass, member of the pre-war Sejm, in his memoir. Labeling. Forced labor, separation, and plundering. More and more frequently, German gangs invaded Jewish homes, plundered them, and took the furniture away in vans, recalled Władysław Szpilman in his memoir. Let's read the rest of them. Harsher regulations were introduced in the summer of 1940. Jews were forbidden to use certain streets such as Ujazdowskie Boulevard. Later, Germans introduced separate tram carriages for Jews and only allowed them to live in certain districts. According to Zamknięcie Getta, the closing of the ghetto by an unknown author. We all know about the labeling with the Star of David. So I don't think I need to explain. We are imprisoned within double walls, a wall of brick for our bodies and a wall of silence for our spirits. And this is what happened. I wanted Warsaw to be a great city. Today, as it stands in defense of Poland's honor, that Warsaw stands at the summit of its greatest and its glory. And so we know what it all led to. It led to the absolute destruction of the Jewish community in Poland. And now it brings me to the present. We're standing in front of the Pauline Museum. We are walking those familiar streets that we have walked when we went through the March of the Living. You might not know this, but especially this part of the city is a cemetery. Under many buildings, there are buried bones of the people that have died during the war. Me and my mother have had an occasion to talk to her friend who said this. Even in the 50s, you could still feel the stench of the dead, the stench of the dead bodies, because After the war, new buildings were built on top of already existing basements in which dead people lied. Those bodies were not removed, and so you could still feel the stench of the dead. I will also take you to a place. We drove here with mom and we went in the direction of the march, step by step. And somewhere, this is also another monument, by the way. This place is another monument. Somewhere in this region, there will be a new ghetto museum, and the person in charge of closing it informed us that the company might not do a lot of work underground because there are too many bones. In fact, if you wanted to do any building on the terrain of the ghetto, you have to get permission because there are many, as they call it, artifacts underground. My mother's friend said that he knows a person that often says that he takes a walk through the cemetery. He likes to take a walk through the cemetery. And by that he means that he likes to walk the city of Warsaw, the streets of Warsaw, knowing that as he walks the streets of the ghetto, there remain those who died, those who are unnamed, who are underground, under here, under here, possibly under here as well, under the buildings. The city of bones. And I think it puts a certain new perspective when you walk around the streets that you're familiar with and you realize that you are walking on a mass grave of a community that has been murdered here. And as I walked the march thinking about it, I sort of thought that I wanted to share it with you all. I wanted to share those feelings of loss, of a community that is gone, and my my thoughts of, can any of this ever be rebuilt? Can we get any of this back? Is it possible? And it also makes me think that we really must fight tooth and nail for the existing communities, not to let this happen, not to allow cities to become mass graves. This is another monument of the ghetto. And I think this is a big reminder for us to fight for the rights of the marginalized, of those who are treated as though they did not matter. Because I do think as we need to, we need to learn from the past, and we need to build a better future, even if it's difficult. It does. It does leave you speechless. It leaves you like, as we visited the street from before World War II, theaters, coffee shops, hospitals, a whole gigantic community uprooted, ended, and now the only thing that remains is a shadow of what once was. And that is the saddest thing of all. If you enter here, and I don't think that's possible, there is a hill. I will include photos of that hill when we do the video upload, because there's a monument here as well. So yes, I hope I was able to share how I feel adequately about the city of bones, of what was, of the meaning of the march, and sort of that I was able to share my feelings from yesterday. You know? And it's like, it was an extremely bad timing, because as all of this was happening, I saw people sharing that song on Twitter of the person playing on her little guitar singing, "Why can't we talk about them?" I'm not saying that Hitler was a bad guy, but why? I'm not saying that Hitler wasn't a bad guy, but why can't we talk about them? As this march was about to happen. And it just reminds you that there's still a lot of work to do. That there's, even after all of this, even after Warsaw became a city of bones, things like that still happen. And I just think that there should not be a place for that. I think it should be unacceptable. And I think it goes without saying that any type of bigotry should just be unacceptable across the board. Okay. If you think this sort of thing, if you like this sort of thing, which is a weird way to put it, but if you think this sort of thing is valuable, if you would want me to make more segments in this style, then do all the things that are usually the likes, the subscriptions, and all of these things.